Are we live? Let me check if we are live. Just give me a moment. Right. I think we are live. Okay. So, very good evening, everybody. Very good evening. Today we're going to be talking about Parajumbles. I'll take you through the theory for Parajumbles and we'll solve some previous year questions, right? That's what we're here for. That's what we're going to be doing. Just allow me to give you a small introduction of the Unacademy platform before we begin with the lesson for the day. Right. So, Unacademy is perhaps India's largest learning platform today when it comes to cracking any and every competitive exam. This is the YouTube channel called Crack Management Exams. You hear for management exams like CAT, GMAT, NMAT, SAT, and the likes. I am Prankur Arora. I am going to be your instructor on this journey. Right. I've been a trainer and a coach for the past couple of years. I've been in the learning industry for the past 2 years. I've even had the opportunity to consult with various organizations like Marico, Becton Dickinson, Interglobe, PGCIL, FMC Corp. Very many companies, different industries, different functions of employees, different kinds of programs. Right, so I've been doing that for the past 2 years. I'm also a published author. I wrote this book called It's Not Funny. The book is a work of satirical fiction. It was launched a couple of years back, right? And even garnered positive reviews from the likes of Biswapati Sarkar, Papa CJ, comedy legends. So if you're fond of reading, if you're fond of fiction, or if you're fond of dark, satirical, sardonic humor, be sure to check it out. I also hold advanced certifications in facilitation from an American organization called Leadership Management International (LMI), and I run a production house called Tamasha Entertainment. So that's pretty much about me. Welcome aboard this journey of learning. I'll be taking you through various aspects of Para Jumbles today. So, you know, there are quite a lot of features that add to the Unacademy pedagogy. Some of those features include stuff like giving you access to daily live classes on the portal, right, where all kinds of interaction happens in real time. You can engage in discussions, ask questions, answer polls, all of that happens in real time. Then there are live tests and quizzes, and the idea of tests and quizzes is that it helps you evaluate your preparation because the mock tests and quizzes, they are on the same pattern as the exam that you're preparing for. Courses on the platform are all structured courses, in line with the exam syllabus that you're preparing for, and with one subscription you get unlimited access to anything and everything on the platform. You will find a plethora of educators on the platform who've all successfully mentored aspirants into various top tier business schools like your IIMs, MDIs, XLRIs, right? uh, you can experience all live classes for free on the platform, and then decide whether you want to subscribe or not, because there are quite a lot of additional key benefits that come along with the subscription. New courses, new batches, they keep on going live on the platform on a daily basis. um, Language is never a barrier because we've got educators teaching in vernacular languages as well. So if you're not as comfortable with English, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find somebody who's teaching in a regional language that you've been brought up with or you've been brought upon. you design your own schedule, which is very, very cool about the Unacademy portal, because the entire ownership lies with you. You decide who are the kind of educators you want to learn from. You decide what are the kind of courses you want to enroll into, and all we do is we give you those timely reminders so that you don't miss out on anything that you basically set your eyes on, right? And with the one subscription, you get access to anything and everything. You can watch all recorded courses, all live classes from the comfort of any of your devices. As I was saying, all interaction happens in real time on the platform. Plus, we have this really cool feature wherein all question and answers happen in the form of polls, right? So it's another adrenaline rush altogether. We give you detailed reports and analysis of your mock tests. Now that is because the idea is to help you develop some perspective about your learning journey. Where do you lie when it comes to your preparation, right? Because we give you data like, what are your topic wise scores, right? What is the time that you're spending on a question of Parajumbles versus the time you're spending on a question of reading comprehension. Stuff like that will help you develop perspective, and then do some course correction if need be. Also, you'll see that I'll be scribbling a lot of things as we go through this class, and all these class notes with educator annotations, they're made available to you once you subscribe to the platform. Talking of subscription, these are the various subscription models available to you. You can clearly see that as the time period of the subscription goes up, the cost of the subscription per month is going down dramatically, right? You can clearly see that. Plus, the idea is that any kind of learning journey for a competitive exam is a lengthy, it's a long learning journey. So I would recommend that you opt in for a longer subscription period, probably a 6 month or a 12 month, so that you give yourself that opportunity of time to develop that comfort level, with the portal, with the educator, as well as with the exam that you're preparing for, that you're studying for. Having said that, if you use my name Prankur, first name Prankur, as your referral code, you get an extra 10% off on any of the packages that you go for, right? So let's start with Parajumbles, right? Now, the idea of Parajumbles is that, some people call it sentence rearrangement, some people call it Parajumbles, right? You on an average get at least 4 to 5 questions in every cat exam pertaining to Parajumbles. The idea is that there are 5 to 6 sentences that will be mentioned, and you have to basically form a paragraph out of them, paragraph that logically makes the maximum sense, right? So you have to basically figure out the order of all these sentences. Now, the idea is that there are broadly three things that you need to know to solve these Parajumbles question, three strategies that you need to be aware of. The first strategy is something that I call general to the specific rule. Now the idea is that the opening sentence of the paragraph, the opening sentence of any and every paragraph, if you read an article, you read an essay, you read anything, the opening sentence is always the introductory sentence, which uh, it's an introductory sentence that does not really delve out details, right? You don't get a lot of details from that introductory sentence. The idea of the introductory sentence is that it introduces a topic or a person or an event, right? So it sets context without giving details, right? That is basically the job of the very first sentence of the paragraph. Sets context without giving details, right? Introduces a person or an event or probably a topic. Let me write that down as well. Introducing topic, event, or person. And when it comes to the specific, right, you start with the general, but then your sentences start becoming specific, right? Then you start shelling out all the details that the paragraph needs to shell out, all the information, all the evidence that the paragraph needs to present, right? But you start with general, moving on to specific. That is strategy number 1, right? Strategy number 2 is something we call the mandatory pairs. Now, what are mandatory pairs? Just give me a moment. Right. What are mandatory pairs? The idea of mandatory pairs is, basically sentences that go together. Sentences that go together. Now, how do we figure out if sentences have to go together? There are two, three rules again, right? Sabse pehla, the first rule that you need to be very clear on is that, if your sentence is mentioning noun, the sentences that use pronoun, they will come after the sentence that, refers to noun, because pronouns need to have a target. As simple as that, right? Then there's, the idea of the subject, right? There's the idea of the subject that, if two statements have the same subject, two sentences with the same subject, they'll go together. Then there's stuff like, the time sequence, right? Time sequence, that is also something that you need to be very very clear about. And then there's something that we call transition words. Transition words are simple things, simple words like, also, uh, but, words like instead, nevertheless, besides, right, etc. I'll write etc here. Instead, nevertheless, beside, aside from, in addition to, above all, these are transition words that need to have a reference, to a sentence. And finally, the third rule or the third strategy that I need you to be aware of is the closing sentence. The closing sentence is very, sometimes we're not able to figure out, the first 3 4 sentences of the paragraph, we're not able to figure out the order. But if you look at the options and you look at the closing sentences of every option, that helps us figure out the answer. Now, the closing sentence, very very important, does not give new information, right? No new info, right? It basically concludes on something that has already been mentioned in the paragraph, right? That is what you need to know about the closing sentence. No new information will be presented. All right, let's start with the questions now. The first question: take 90 seconds, figure out which option is making the maximum sense, and then we'll discuss it. Hit me up on the chat with your answer in the meantime, okay? Right. So are you guys finding it tough to reach the answer? Okay, Anushka says the fourth one. Let's look at whether she's gotten it right. So the idea is you can look at all these answer options and figure out and see very clearly that B E, right? So we know for a fact that B and E sentences, they go together. They are linked, right? B is he was a 20-year-old philosophy major at Hamilton College. E is the standard course work, ancient, modern, and contemporary philosophy enthralled him, right? So we know for a fact that B and E go together. At the same time, we can clearly see that three options begin with sentence C and one option begins with D. Let's figure out which one to us seems like a more appropriate beginning to the paragraph. C says, in January 2010, while driving from Chicago to Minneapolis, Sam McNerney played an audiobook and had an epiphany. D is the quest for an empirical understanding of consciousness has long preoccupied neurobiologists. So we can clearly see that C is kind of setting context here, right? C is giving us the nouns, C is telling us about audiobook, C is telling about epiphany, C is giving us the time period. So C is more appropriate opening, so I'll eliminate option 1. Now I know for a fact after C in every option we have an A. The book was Jonah Learer's How We Decide, and the epiphany was that consciousness could reside in the brain. So C and A are linked, right? Now we know for a fact either we'll have F after C or we'll have D, right? Let's figure out which one makes more sense here. Either we'll have D or we'll have F. The quest for an empirical understanding of consciousness has long preoccupied neurobiologists, right? Either this can accompany A or F can accompany A. But McNerney was no neurobiologist. See, understand that when we say McNerney was no neurobiologist, A needs to have talked about neurobiology. Otherwise, why are we mentioning neurobiologist here? So, CAF does not make sense at all. Plus, F will follow D. Why? Because D is talking about neurobiology. F has a callback to neurobiology. So F needs to follow D. And the only option that is giving us that is option 4. So good job, Anushka. Well done. So that is why option 4 makes the maximum sense here, right? So you can clearly see that when it comes to solving parajumbles questions, it makes for a good strategy to look at all your answer options once and see if there are links visible to you, right? Because then you can attack all your sentences in a very targeted way. Okay, let's go to the next question. Hmm. Another 60 seconds and then we'll discuss this one as well. Right. So let's read the answer options one by one now. Uh, First, let's look at the answer options: E C, E A, E A. Okay. And then we have A B here. Right. So these are a little jumbled. Right now, we can't say for sure which one, uh, will be it. So let's look at all the sentences now. Ganushka says answer is the third option. All right. Although there are large regional variations, it is not infrequent to find a large number of people sitting here and there and doing nothing. Once in office. So, a really important thing that we have to basically look at in option B is they. Right? This is the trick to solving the question. What is this they referring to? Because this needs to have, I mean, this pronoun needs something, right? Once in office, they receive friends and relatives who feel free to call anytime without prior appointment. What is this they referring to? While working, one is struck by the slow and clumsy actions and reactions in different attitudes, procedure rather than outcome orientation, and the lack of consideration. Even those who are employed, those, okay, they and those could be connected. Even those who are employed often come late to the office and leave early unless they are forced to be punctual. Work is not intrinsically valued in India. Quite often, people, right? So, this they could refer to people visit ailing friends and relatives, or go out of their way to help them in their personal matters, even during office hours. So, we have option A where we are talking about people. We have option B here, we have option D, and we have option F, right? So, either it could be AB, it could be DB, or it could be FB, right? This is the link that we could have, right? Right? Either AB or DB or FB. Let's look at these now. Although there are regional variations, it is infrequent to find a large number of people sitting here and there doing nothing. Once in office, they receive friends. See, what are we talking about? We are talking about people who come late to office and leave early unless they are forced to be punctual. And once in office, uh, they receive friends and relatives who feel free to call anytime without prior appointment. So, what is making sense? Quite often, people visit ailing friends and relatives to go out of their. See, we are talking about an attitude of laziness, right? So DB is probably making the maximum sense here. In sentence D, what are we saying? We are saying even those who are employed often come late to the office and leave early unless they are forced to be punctual. Once in office, they receive friends and relatives, right? पहले तो they come late, they leave early, and when they are in office, they receive friends. So what are we talking about? We're talking about this attitude of not working, right? Not working productively, not working properly. So DB is probably the most coherent, and the only answer we have option 1 and 3 that is giving us DB, right? FB is not logically coherent, and AB is not logically coherent either. ठीक है. Now either we need our paragraph to begin with EC or EA. Work is not intrinsically valued in India. Although there are large regional variations, it is infrequent to find a large number of people sitting here and there and doing nothing. Work is not intrinsically valued in India. By working, one is struck by the slow and clumsy actions and reactions in different attitudes, procedures. Uh, so, logically, work is not intrinsically valued in India, although there are regional variations. It is not infrequent to find a large number. EA is making more coherent sense. A is talking about the value of work. C is talking about something else altogether. C is talking about actions and reactions and attitudes and whatnot. But A is developing on what we are saying in option in sentence E. So therefore, I think Anushka, you've gotten it right. Option 3 makes the maximum sentence sense here. Good job, well done. Let's look at question 3 now. Right. Let's read the sentences now. But in the industrial era, destroying the enemy's productive capacity means bombing the factories which are located in the cities. So, in the agrarian era, if you need to destroy the enemy's productive capacity, what you want to do is burn his fields, or if you really wish, salt them. Okay, Anushka says option 1. Alright, let's look at that. Now, in the information era, destroying the enemy's productive capacity means destroying the information infrastructure. How do you battle with your enemy? The idea is to destroy the enemy's productive capacity, and depending upon economic foundation, that productive capacity is different in each case. With regard to defense, the purpose of the military is to defend the nation and be prepared. Alright, so we can see that these are pretty jumbled. We are not able to figure out anything from the options, so we have to resort to figuring out the sentences. Now you'd have seen that they are talking about different eras. What are they talking about? They're talking about different eras. And if you remember, uh, we have mandatory pairs where we are talking about transition words and time sequence, right? Now we have a but here. That means there needs to be a contrasting opinion. This is a contrasting opinion, right? This is a what? This is a contrasting opinion. And then we are talking about eras: agrarian era, industrial era, information era. Now in the information era means we are talking about what? We are talking about the present here, right? C is basically what? C is the present, right? Now, if C is the present and A is the but, then B, uh, so in the agrarian era, if you need to destroy the enemy's productive capacity, what you want to do is burn his fields or salt them. But in the industrial era, destroying the enemy's productive capacity means bombing the factory. So this is past, B is past, A is a contrasting statement, so A might contrast the past, and C is the present. So BAC will probably be the order of sentences. Are you getting my point? BAC will probably be the order of sentences. Now we have BAC here, we have BAC here, and we have BAC here. Here we don't have BAC, so we remove this. Right? Now, um, how do we figure it out further? How do you battle with your enemy? With regard to defense, the purpose, the idea is to destroy the enemy's productive capacity, and depending upon economic foundation, that productive capacity is different in each case. So we have E, that is kind of answering D's question. How do you battle with your enemy? The idea is to destroy the enemy's productive capacity depending upon economic foundation. That productive capacity is different in each case. E is kind of answering D, right? So probably E will follow D, right? And we have an F. With regard to defense, the purpose of the military is to defend the nation and be prepared to do battle with its enemy. Plus, E will kind of come before BAC. Why? Because look at B. So, in the agrarian era, if you need to destroy enemy's productive capacity, what you want to do is burn his fields. Right? We're talking about productive capacity. We're talking about productive capacity. So, EBAC is kind of a link. We need the EBAC. There is no, there is EBAC here, and there is EBAC here as well. Right. So we have to figure out what? We have to figure out F and D. Right? Will D follow F or F follow D? With regard to defense, purpose of the military is to defend the nation and be prepared to do battle with its enemy. How do you battle with your enemy? So D is putting a question on F. So D will follow F. Right, Anushka? That's where I think you've gotten this right. I think you've gotten it right. Well done. So FDEBAC is the correct answer. All right. Wow. Good question. Question 4 now. Right. This is a rather easy question, guys. Rather easy question. Should be able to solve it quickly. Right. Anushka says fourth one. All right. Fourth one seems to be the likely answer. Anushka, well done. So BC is basically the link here. In areas where there are no lords or laws, or in frontier zones where all men go armed, the attitude of the peasantry may well be different. So, indeed, it may be on the fringe of the unsubmissive. What is this unsubmissive? What is this it referring to? It is referring to attitude, right? It is referring to attitude. It cannot refer to political situation. It cannot refer to do we have anything else? No, we don't really have anything else. It is a callback to what? It is a callback to attitude. So BC is the link here, and that is how fourth is the only viable answer option here because we needed BC. Nowhere else do we have the BC link. We have CB here, which does not make sense at all, right? C has to follow B because C contains the pronoun it refers to attitude. All right. Question 5. So if you pay attention to the sentences, you'll figure out something that we have not option, but sentence A talking about Michael Hoffman, a poet and a translator, accepts this sorry fact without approval or complaint. Um, right, and but thanklessness and impossibility do not daunt him. Him refers to what? Him refers to Michael Hoffman. He he refers to Michael Hoffman. He acknowledges too, in fact, he returns to the point often that best translators of poetry always fail at some level. Hoffman feels passionately about his work. Hoffman, right? So we are not using his complete name here. That means D has to come later in the paragraph, right? That means D has to come later in the paragraph. His is again a reference to Hoffman, and this is clear. This is clear from his writing. In terms of the gap between worth, and rewards, translators come somewhere near nurses and street cleanchers. So, um, look at the sentence, right? Michael Hoffman, a poet and a translator, accepts this sorry fact without approval or complaint. What is this sorry fact? Right? What is this sorry fact? This sorry fact is basically a reference to sentence E. In terms of the gap between worth and rewards, translators come somewhere near nurses and street cleanchers. So the idea is This is the sorry fact. Sentence E is giving us the sorry fact. So EA is the link here, right? We have EA in the first option, we have EA in the third option, we have EA here as well, but we don't have an EA here, so we'll eliminate option 2. Now, when we know for a fact that EA is the link, does EA come in the beginning of the sentence, in the beginning of the paragraph? Yes, because here it is where we are introducing Michael Hoffman, right? DC cannot come before because we are using pronouns even before we mention the gentleman's name, right? So we'll eliminate option 4. We are left with options 1 and 3 now. Anushka says option 1. All right. So, Anushka, the answer here is option 3. Um, but good on you for reaching option 1, right? Because this is a little tricky to figure out. So, we have EA beginning the paragraph, and we now have to figure out whether we'll have CBD or we'll have CDB, right? So, C is common, but we need to know whether the paragraph ends with BD or DB, right? Um, But thanklessness and impossibility do not daunt him. Hoffman feels passionately about his work, and this is clear from his writings, right? So, Hoffman feels passionately about his work, and this is clear from his writings, but thanklessness and impossibility do not daunt him. The ideal conclusion to the paragraph is sentence D, right? This but is basically referring to everything that we say in sentence C. He acknowledges too, in fact, he returns to the point often best translators of poetry always fail at some level, but thanklessness and impossibility do not daunt him. So this but is basically talking about sentence C, right? So B follows C and D follows B, right? That is why option 3 is more appropriate than option 1. All right. Good job still. Question 6 now. Right. So, um, now, look at the sentences, right? The situations in which violence occurs and the nature of that violence tends to be clearly defined, at least in theory, as in the proverbial Irishman's question: is this a private fight or can anyone join in? Okay, Anushka says option 4 here. Alright. So, the actual risks to outsiders, though no doubt higher than our societies, is calculable. Probably the only uncontrolled applications of force are those of social superiors to social inferiors, and even here there are probably some rules. However, binding the obligation to kill, members of feuding families engaged in mutual massacre will be genuinely appalled if by some mischance a bystander or outsider is killed. Right. See, I can see why, Anushka, you would go for option four, because we are talking about outsiders here and here as well, right? But the operable term here is calculable. We have to figure out. We have to basically figure out, so the actual risk to outsiders, though no doubt higher than our societies, is What is calculable? Right? The situation in which violence occurs and the nature of that violence tends to be clearly defined, at least in theory. This clearly defined in theory. Calculable is basically the answer to what? The answer to this. As in the proverbial Irishman questions, is this a private fight or can anyone join in? So the actual risk to outsiders, though no doubt higher than our societies, is calculable. The idea is that A and B are interlinked. B is answer to A. Okay, I can imagine why you would go for option 4, because we have DB, but the answer is DABC, not DBAC. Uh, am I making sense? So, the actual risk to outsiders, though no doubt higher than our societies, is calculable. Alright? So, that is why DABC is the correct answer. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, so this is, this might seem tricky, but if you are able to crack the rule they are testing you on, this is a pretty easy question. Probably the easiest of the lot. Right. So let's look at it. Um, if you are used to having your stimulation come in from outside, your mind never develops its own habits of thinking and reflecting. Okay. Okay, Anushka says option D, alright. Marx thought that religion was the opiate because it soothed people's pain and suffering and prevented them from rising in rebellion. If Karl Marx was alive today, he would say that television is the opiate of the people. Television and similar entertainments are even more of an opiate because of their addictive tendencies. So, see, ideally in paragraphs, if you are talking about an individual, their first name will come first. Their full name will come, in the beginning of the paragraph, and then you can refer to them as Marx. But you have to begin your paragraphs by referring to this gentleman as Karl Marx and not Marx, right? So ideally, In the paragraph, sentence 3 will come before sentence 2. 2 will follow 3. Either 3 follows 2, 3 follows 2, 3 follows 2. So we eliminate option A, B, and C. Only option D is giving us, the version where 2 is following 3. Right? Marks will come in later in the paragraph. Karl Marx will come in first. Right? So 3241 is the ideal answer option. Good job, Anushka. Well done. Let's move on to the next question now. Right. So let's understand this question. Let's read all the statements. Then two astronomers, the German Johannes Kepler and the Italian Galileo Galilei, started publicly to support the Copernican theory, despite the fact that the orbits it predicted did not quite match the ones observed. His idea was that the sun was stationary at the center and that the Earth and the planets move in circular orbits around the sun. A simple model was proposed in 1514 by a Polish priest, Nicholas Copernicus. Nearly a century passed before his idea was taken seriously. Now, the idea here is that here it is we are introducing the idea. This has to be the first sentence, right? Because we are talking about a simple model that was proposed in 1514, right? After that, we have to follow the time sequence. We have to follow what? We have to follow the basic time sequence. Sentence 3 will come first. Then what is happening? Then his idea was that we are talking about simple model that was proposed. What was the model? The model was that the sun was stationary at the center and that the earth and the planets move in circular orbits around the sun. Then comes nearly a century passed before the idea was taken seriously. Then two astronomers, this started to support publicly the Copernican theory. So 3241. Simply by following the chronology, right? Time sequence. What came first, what came next, what came next, what came next. Right? This is how you have to solve such questions. So 3241 option B is the correct answer here. Right? Let's move on to the next question. By the time he got to Lingeflug 4 years later, he had learnt many lessons. In fact, he began his second stint as top dog by calling the entire company together in a hangar and asking for help. A far cry from his barking out commands just 48 months back. At SAS, he arrives at a time crisis. This book is chock block full of intrusive stories and practical advice describing Carton's activities at Wing Resort, where he assumed his first presidency at age 32, Lingeflug and SARS in particular. He began at Wing Resort as an order giver, not a listener, neither to his people nor to his customers, and made every mistake in the book. This question has a trick to it. Try to figure it out. Take a couple of minutes and then we'll discuss it. Right. So let's look at this, you guys. We have the look at options. Either the paragraph begins with sentence 2 or sentence 3. Sentence 2 is, we are talking about somebody we are referring to as a he. Paragraph cannot begin with a pronoun. We need the subject. Look at sentence 3. This book is chock a block full of intrusive stories and practical advice describing cartoons activities. So, what? We have a noun here. So, we know for a fact the paragraph will always begin with a noun, not a pronoun. Right? Where he assumed this, he is referring to cartoon. Right? Making sense. Plus, what are we saying? We are saying that his activities at Wingrosser at age 32, this came in first. Then came Linjeflug, second. And then came SAS in particular, third. So we know for a fact that the order is also being laid out in sentence 3. Right? Sabse pehle Wingrosser. Right? So after sentence 3, we'll have sentence 4. He began at Wingrosser. Then we'll have Linjeflug by the time he got to Linjeflug. Then we have SAS in particular, and then we have SAS, sentence 2. So 3, 4, 1, 2 is the order which can be deciphered from this very statement itself. So option D is the correct answer here. Last question of the day, guys. Right, let's look at the sentences now. The potential exchanges between the officials of IBBF and the Maharashtra Bodybuilding Association has all the trappings of a drama we are accustomed to. Okay, Anushka says option 2. All right, let's look at that. In the case of sports persons, there is room for some sympathy, but the apathy of the administrators, which has even led to sanctions from international bodies, is unpardonable. All right. A case in the point is the hefty penalty of US test $10,000 slapped on the Indian Bodybuilding Federation for not fulfilling its commitment for holding the championships. Now, very important to note here we are talking about Indian Bodybuilding Federation. Here we are using the acronym. So, sentence 1 will come later in the passage, sentence 3 will come earlier than sentence 1 because we are using the full name here, right? It is a matter of deep regret and concern that sports administrators often cause more harm to the image of the country than sportsmen and sportswomen do through their dismal performances. So, guys, this sentence, this is an example of what we are talking in sentence 4, right? This is an example of what we're talking in sentence 4. So C will follow D, right? C will obviously follow D. Um, and right, and we know for a fact that uh, here, or rather this A will also follow C, right? A will follow C. A will follow C, right? So CA, okay. AC, nope. CA, right? CA, and CA. Now we have to figure out where D and B go, right? Um, we know for a fact that this is the first. In the case of sports persons, there is room for sympathy, but the apathy of the administrators, which has even led to sanctions from international bodies, is unpardonable. Right. So, um, this can be like the concluding sentence, right? Does that, or this has to be the potential exchanges between the officials and has all the trappings of a drama we are accustomed to, right? Um, or rather, if we have CA and DB and DC, right? So, ideally speaking, what should the paragraph end be? Should the paragraph end with D, or should the paragraph end with A? That is another thing that we have to land on right here, right now. Should the paragraph end with D or the paragraph end with A? This, a case in point, is basically referring to what? Referring to this idea, right? So D cannot be the ending of the paragraph, right? D can be the beginning of the paragraph, and then we can have B, where it says that it is a case of sports. In the case of sport persons, there is room for some sympathy, but the apathy of administrators, which has even led to sanctions from international bodies, is unpardonable. And then we'll have C, right? This is an example. Here we are talking about administrators and sports person. Here we are talking about sports persons. Then we are giving an example, and then finally we are ending with sentence A, right? So DBCA, Anushka, I think, is the correct answer option. Well done, good job. So with this, we come to the end of today's lesson, guys. Hope you had fun. Hope you had lots and lots of fun. I'm also taking a few special classes, and I'm launching a course, on the Unacademy portal soon. So would request you to start following me if you like my lessons. Once again, thank you for attending today's class. I'll see you again. Till then, stay safe, stay strong, and stay mellow.